A lot of negative reaction coming from people in the marijuana industry. People hoping to be in the marijuana industry very soon because their states just passed laws and they haven't got their apparatuses in place yet to actually offer sales of marijuana to adults yet. But they're mad because they're like, whoa, now we have this extra thing to worry about. What else is, what are we, what's happening? What's going to happen next? What's happening right now? Well, we finally heard from Jeff Sessions, and he says he's not a fan of marijuana expansion. And that doesn't surprise anybody who's listened to his cold hearted, deaf to facts, deaf to public consensus statements that he's made before. The guy, as I've said before, is a drug war dinosaur. All right. He was given his facts at church one Sunday about marijuana a long time ago, and he's never diverted from them facts. He's never sought any other facts to try to contradict those facts. And when seeing them other facts that contradicts his alternative facts about marijuana, his cognitive dissonance wall goes up, and he basically recoils into the Jeff Sessions safe space where he don't have to hear anything that contradicts his already well crafted worldview about marijuana. And I'm here to tell people like him that you're done. Jeff Sessions and all the other drug war dinosaurs out there that still are trying to keep prohibition alive on marijuana. You're done. Your time is up. It's over for you. All right? Pack it up and move on to something else. Enforcement priorities should not ever have marijuana anywhere near the top. Matter of fact, marijuana should be legalized, and you should have regulations in place for the distribution of it, and that would make it something that is controlled. Like you want to call marijuana a controlled substance. It's absolutely is not. All right, so we're going to look at what Jeff Sessions said yesterday. Here he goes. Most of you know I probably don't think America is going to do better, is going to be a better place when more people of all ages, and particularly young people, start smoking pot. He told reporters at the Department of Justice Monday, according to Political. So I'm going to go, every time he says something, I'm going to counter it with the statistics are showing that where you legalize marijuana, like in Colorado and Washington, we have numbers. And the numbers are saying that people of all ages, well, when it comes to people of adult age, more people are saying that they smoke marijuana. I think that's just because they came out of the closet. But for the purpose of this argument, we're going to say that more people that are of age, adult age, have said they smoke marijuana in legalized states. Now, the statistic also says, the study also showed that more people that are younger, that are not of age, teenagers, high schoolers, less people are using marijuana. I heard even another one that said less people are using drugs altogether, illicit drugs altogether. All right. And his next statement, I'm definitely not a fan of expanded use of marijuana. States can pass the laws they choose. I would just say it remains a violation of federal law to distribute marijuana throughout any place in the United States, whether a state legalizes it or not. So this kind of reinforces my earlier statement that this new action that Mr. Spicer told us about last week might just be that they're open to be doing some token raids here and there. A little raid here and a little raid there, and I would guess that you're looking at something like I've seen San Pueblo, Colorado, where they have outdoor grows of over 100 plants. Now I remember back in the day when it was illegal to grow marijuana, period, anywhere for any reason. The feds really didn't care about anything that was under 99 plants. So if we can keep that in mind, when it comes to growers, we'll see. Sessions also said the potency of marijuana has risen and has violence stemming from the drug's distribution. Yeah, the Mexican drug cartels. Remember? Wherever it's illegal and not regulated, you do have violence around everything. Quote, I believe it's an unhealthy practice, and current levels of THC in marijuana are very high compared to what they were a few years ago, he said. More on that later, because there's, some new reefer madness, not really new, but the reefer madness that's floating around today on the news basically says that this isn't your dad's pot. Like, come on, give me a break. This is not new. They've used this type of reefer madness ever since they made marijuana illegal 80 years ago. Every decade they rolled out with something about marijuana that was more potent than last year or last decade. And it's tiring. Anyway, quote, we're seeing real violence around, I'm guessing, the high potency. No. Experts are telling me there's more violence around marijuana than one would think, and there's big money involved. I think all you're talking about is the black market. So the best way to handle getting the black market under control, as we've seen with the prohibition of alcohol, and as we've seen in Colorado and California, well, we haven't really seen it with the recreational in California, but I seen a story in California where the drug cartels were actually importing weed from California rather than exporting weed to California. So just getting rid of the black market is basically what he's talking about, not heavily enforcing marijuana laws, federal laws in states that legalize for adult use. That's my opinion. You can read this however you want, but you can't be talking about real violence around legal marijuana. There is none. Every once in a while you see a story where somebody tries to rob something or whatever. Yeah, that happens whether marijuana is legal or not, because you always have a criminal element, and weed is a soft target, and people that manufacture and distribute weed are soft targets. They're not usually violent people, and they ain't usually packing heat, especially in a regulated, legalized market. Sessions additionally confirmed that a series of guidelines about federal enforcement and prosecution efforts regarding marijuana is under review. The guidance, widely called the Cole Memo after former Deputy Attorney General James Cole, stipulated a narrower federal role for enforcing its laws in states where marijuana sales are legal. Quote, most states have some limits on it, and people are violating those limits, Sessions said. We're going to look at it and try to adopt reasonable policies. Now, if you want to go after people that are violating the state's limits that they imposed, I have no problem with that. I mean, I don't really like some of these limits I've heard and seen and reported on around the country, but they are what they are. You want to change them, you got to change them at the level that you're at. Federally speaking, like I said earlier, 99 plants was a limit that they used to play around with, as far as they weren't really trying to go after anything less than 100 plants. So again, he is hinting about states' rights a little bit on that answer. The DOJ announced in 2013 it would not directly challenge state marijuana legalization laws and would tone down enforcement of federal laws against pot sales in states allowing the practice. The so-called Cole Memo said federal enforcement and prosecution efforts would instead focus on stopping drug-related violence, distribution to minors, halting gang involvement in drug sales, and blocking marijuana transportation to states where it remains illegal. Now, that all falls under what I just said. Like, I don't have a problem with you going after actual criminal elements trying to mask themselves as doing marijuana business in regulated states. And in unregulated states, I mean, if they're not doing a good enough job enforcing their marijuana laws, then I guess if they need your help, I don't see what the point is. And unless it's these violent gangsters that you're talking about, these cartel types. Last I checked, the cartel types don't really operate in states that have legalized marijuana. They only operate where there's a black market that's thriving, and that's not. I mean, usually it's not the case in a situation where you have a regulated marketplace. So now maybe Sessions talking about the violence around marijuana is more than one would believe or whatever. Maybe he's just trying to throw out this narrative and start forming this new narrative that, there's a lot of violence around the marijuana industry. So, that gives them a reason to bump marijuana up on the list of enforcement priorities. We'll keep getting back to this list of enforcement priorities because that's the most important. That's the biggest obstacle in the way of the federal government cracking down on Colorado and California and Washington and other states. Okay, we got more on this. States can pass the laws they want. In a meeting with reporters, Sessions said the department was reviewing an Obama administration Justice Department memo that gave states flexibility in passing marijuana laws. Now, when he says they're reviewing it, like I said, they looked at it and they're like, "Oh, see, if there's violence involved, then we can go. That's a green light." So they're using the Cole memo to develop talking points now, but I'm sure they're gonna try to they can rewrite this memo at any time. All right, quote, experts are telling me there's more violence around marijuana than one would think. See, they're just parsing it out, getting the pieces out of it that they can use later. Now, we're going to see more. Studies have found no correlation between legalization of marijuana and violent crime rates, but law enforcement officials in states such as Colorado say drug traffickers have taken advantage of lax marijuana laws to hide in plain sight, illegally growing and shipping the drug across state lines where it can sell for a much higher. Pot advocates say officials have exaggerated the problem. And I'll go ahead and say it again. We haven't seen a lot of data on this, but every once in a while you see a warehouse that gets busted or even an outdoor grow. And I think it's pretty easy for them to know who's registered as legal grow operations in Colorado. They're really visible. They're like, hey, we're part of the community. We love the community. We're paying taxes. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're hiring people. We've hired more jobs last year than any other sector in Colorado. But, they're going to exaggerate every problem they can. And now check out, here's Sessions again with his, he's confusing legitimate marketplace for marijuana with a regulated system. He's confusing that with the black market. So, quote, you can't sue somebody for a drug debt. You can in a regulated market. The only way to get your money is through strong arm tactics, and violence tends to follow that, Sessions said. It sounds like he's talking about Al Capone's Scarface or something, this sounds like you're talking about just straight up gangster shit. This isn't a regulated market that you're talking about. So if you're talking about going after marijuana, please distinguish whether you're talking about going after completely illegal marketplace marijuana or are you going after a legitimate business? Like when we see a raid, will it be the feds kicking in a warehouse with a bunch of cartel people camped out in the corner, waking up oh shit, we're getting raided? Or are you going to go find out, where one of those 2,000 plant growing facilities in San Pueblo and kick in the ranch, even though they got a sign out front that says, hey, we're a legit business that paid all of our fees and we're following our law to the letter? Are you going to kick them in? Are you going to kick in the dispensary? Or are you going to kick in the drug dealer that sells crack, meth, marijuana, guns, and all that other shit in the same under the same roof? Or are you going to go after the dispensary with a highly regulated selection of different products that have been approved by the state law, regulatory system in that state? So what you're saying is totally like apples and oranges. If you're talking about enforcing federal law against a legitimate business in a state that has a legitimate marketplace. Sessions said he met with Nebraska's attorney general, who sued Colorado for allegedly not keeping marijuana within its borders. Why would he even meet with them? That's a moot point. They lost. That lawsuit was dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court, but neighboring states continue to gripe that Colorado and other pot legal states have not done enough to keep the drug from crossing their borders. I'll tell you how you keep it from crossing the borders is just legalize it in your state. And then you have Republicans who still are in denial about how, what Trump is really about. So this guy says Donald Trump won't turn his back on Colorado when it comes to marijuana. He's the Senate President Pro Tem, Jerry Sonnenberg, and we're going to see. Top Republican lawmaker in Colorado is casting doubt on whether Donald Trump's administration will crack down on the legalization of marijuana, saying the new president won't turn his back on states' rights. Well, this is what he will turn his back on states' rights. If he's going to do it, it's going to be on the topic of marijuana. Colorado Senate President Pro Tem Jerry Sonnenberg, the chamber's number 2 Republican and a Trump supporter, reacted after a statement from the White House spokesman Sean Spicer that recreational pot will face greater enforcement. I'm not sure I'd put too much thought or too much credit into what he was saying, Sonnenberg told reporters Monday. The president, what? You're going to pick this one to be the one that Trump's not being honest about it? Come on, man. Trump's talked sideways and, double speak, and, he's contradicted himself in the same sentence more than a few times. So now you're going to finally be like, oh, you know what? He wasn't really serious when he was talking about cracking down on marijuana. Apparently, you haven't been a Republican very long there, buddy. This president has been all about federalism and giving the states more authority. This just flies in the face of that. Huh? I think federalism is the opposite of giving states more authority. I don't know what he's talking about. He gave the states more authority to discriminate against people going to the bathroom, but for some reason he didn't want to give the states any authority when it comes to marijuana. And he said he wouldn't anticipate much coming from it. Well, whatever. Governor Hickenlooper of Colorado downplayed a suggestion a day earlier in a Meet the Press interview, affirming that he didn't believe the federal government would target states like Colorado that legalize weed. Okay, if you say so. I mean, his people actually talk to Trump's people, so I put a little bit more sauce behind his salsa, maybe. Colorado Senator Cory Gardner has suggested that a change in federal policy towards states on marijuana is unlikely, but Sonnenberg's comments are the most forceful Republican pushback against the White House on the issue since the announcement Thursday. Quote, Colorado has been the leader when it comes to marijuana and the regulation. He said, people will look at us for leadership, and I don't think our new president will turn his back on allowing states to do what they need to, whether it's marijuana or anything else. The vast majority of people who supported marijuana continue to support it, and the vast majority of those who hated it in the beginning still hate it. The difference is, Mr. Hickenlooper, is that there's more of us than there is them. Unless you're strictly talking about the Republicans themselves. If you're only talking about Republican voters, then the number of voters that are for legalization is in the area of 35 or 40%, which is the highest that's ever been. But all the other numbers say that America's ready for this shit to be over with and marijuana to be legalized and regulated. And that's all we got on this one. So, yeah, I don't see, unless I see an action, I don't see these words as being anything more than just thinly veiled threats to, I don't know, I mean, it's scary, but at the same time, I don't see it as being the green light yet for any kind of so-called shutdown of the adult use marijuana industry in America, which is poised to pass manufacturing by 2020 for jobs, and by 2024, it is poised to be a $24 billion a year industry. And that's massive. So I don't think you can really plug the dam on this one. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. All those sayings, you just can't do it, man. There's too much at stake. There's too much money on the line when it comes to states that have legalized marijuana. So again, Trump and his minions, we'll see what happens when something happens.